everybody, it's Sarah, and it's Spirit of Saturday, which in my books is always a good thing. And this week we're talking about expectations, and the expectations that people have of us, around us. And one of the things that you will see with every single eating disorder pretty much is that people with eating disorders are generally people pleasers. They're really great at taking care of other people, but they're not so great at taking care of themselves. And people with eating disorders bank way too much of their self-esteem, of their self-worth on what others think of them, what others think and feel about them. And I think that's probably the worst, well, one of the worst ways to judge your self-worth. Almost as bad as a scale. Anyway, and it can be really difficult to get around that, because for years we've spent our lives trying not to ruffle feathers, or trying to straighten everything out so that things go as smoothly as possible. We're not used to asserting our needs, and we're not used to, God forbid, making the odd demand once in a while. And that's something that you have to learn in recovery, or you're not going to get very far. Unfortunately. It's one of the hardest things to learn. And, you have to believe intrinsically that you deserve it, and if you don't, it can be even that much harder to achieve. There's a difference between selfish and self-interest, and I was just talking about this with my therapist, and he, self-interest is probably one of the least selfless, so selfless, things that you can do for those around you. If you're spent and exhausted and completely, wiped out, you're of no use to anybody. But if you take care of yourself enough that you have something left over, then people need you, and people can rely on you, and you can function normally, and that's the optimal goal. And if you can give yourself something, then you definitely have it to give to someone else. A lot of times, starting to ask for what you want and need is difficult. And deciding ahead of time what your boundaries are, what you're willing to take, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to offer, what you're willing to give to anybody else, deciding it ahead of time often makes it a lot easier, because then you have to make sure you don't waver from that set of boundaries. And having boundaries is not a bad thing. Having boundaries is a very healthy thing. And, learning to practice saying no. You can say it to yourself in the mirror, and it'll feel silly, but it can be hard to say to someone else. So if you get used to saying it to yourself, then you have a bit of a chance that you'll be able to do it more assertively and more confidently and comfortably to someone else. One of the things that I think is really important to mention is that eating disorders can be addictive in a number of ways. And one of the things that I found really hard to deal with in recovery, and especially in the early days of recovery, was that I had gone so long, seemingly, with nobody caring about anything that I did, or anything that I tried to do, or anything that I accomplished, and all of a sudden they were so excited I was eating an apple. That is, it's honest, and yeah, it's hard to deal with, because all of a sudden the very thing that you crave, you have, is the attention of those around you. And that's something to be aware of. It's something to make sure, because if you get too hung up on that, then you'll stay in the eating disorder patient role forever, which is not a role you want to stay in forever. Eating disorder patients don't have fun lives. And make sure the expectations are actually there. I know that a lot of the expectations, when I started breaking them down, a lot of them were fueled by me, and a lot of them, nobody would ever in their right mind ask me to do, but I had it, in my head that they had asked me to do this, and that, I was basically tripping myself up. DBT, love DBT. One of the things that DBT goes into is that you can always, always, always ask for a question. Always ask a question, always ask for something, make a demand. You can always do that, provided that you are willing to accept the answer now. In terms of deciding what reasonable expectations are, I would go with, if you wouldn't ask it of someone else, don't let anybody ask it of you. And again, just remember the self-interest versus selfish, and just remember that taking care of yourself is paramount and so, so important. And the people around you that you think are imposing these expectations, or if they are imposing those expectations, in the long run, they'll be grateful, because they'll have a happy, very whole person to be around. Okay, that's it for tonight for me, and I hope everything goes well next week. Take care.